Hi guys, I just thought I'd make a quick video. So just been getting into some discussions with people online, and I thought I'd just come online and just have a bit of a rant. So basically today's video I'm going to talk about fat and why fat is probably the reason why, one, you've got type 2 diabetes in the first place, and two, if you're type 1 diabetic, why you're getting bad blood sugars. So not a lot of people realise this, but fat is the leading cause of diabetes, type 2 diabetes that is, and the reason why, quite simply, is that fat is what causes blood sugars to rise. Now, you probably didn't expect me to say that, but it's true. Fat is what causes blood sugars to rise, because in a normal person, and by normal I mean someone who's healthy and on a plant-based diet, which is what we were designed to eat. If you look at people in, say, traditional Africa or Asia who are eating, largely plant-based diets, they don't have type 2 diabetes. They just don't. They're healthy. Why is that? It's because they eat predominantly plant-based diet because they're too poor to afford meat, and about 80 to 90% of their calories come from carbohydrates. Only about 5 to no more than 10% of their calories come from fat. But in the West, or the standard American diet, people are consuming up to 40% of calories from fat, and then they're wondering why they get type 2. So let's take it a step back here then. So why is it that fat could cause type 2 in the first place? And it's quite simply this: when you take fat into your body, what happens is it makes its way into the bloodstream, and what happens is, imagine this hand here, imagine this hand is the cell, and this hand here is the sugar. And in a normal person who is insulin sensitive, someone who's on in a traditional African Asian country where they eat their traditional African Asian diet, you don't see type 2, because the reason why is those people are healthy, and what happens is, as the sugar comes in, the cell opens up, takes the carbs. That's okay, and that's how it works. Basically, they're insulin sensitive, so what happens is the insulin is easily able to take the sugar into the cell. But in people in the West, America, Canada, Scotland, Germany, France, Europe, etc., in these countries, what happens is we eat high fat diets centered upon animal products, so meat, fish, chicken, eggs, milk and dairy. And what happens is we eat these very high fat, high protein diets, and what happens is they cause insulin resistance. And the way it quite simply works is this. We'll go back to this sort of analogy again. This hand here is the cell, this hand here is the carbs, but because you've eaten the high fat, what's happened is that the cell is actually covered in fat, and what happens is it reduces the effectiveness of the insulin, and it basically inhibits the insulin, so the insulin cannot effectively take the sugar into the cell. It doesn't quite happen as well anymore. So what happens is, because you then now have this insulin resistance, which is being caused by the fat, which is affecting the insulin, stopping the insulin from doing its job, the blood sugars then begin to rise, because what's happened is, as the sugar goes into the bloodstream, rather than being taken into the cells, so as it trickles in, it should then trickle into the cells as it's disseminated through the blood vessel network. Instead, what's happening is, because the people have eaten these high fat diets, instead, as the sugar keeps on coming into the blood, it doesn't make its way into the cells in the body, so therefore the sugar then goes up and starts to rise. So that, guys, is why or how these fat diets cause type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is in no way, shape or form caused by carbohydrates. It's illogical. It doesn't stand up to scientific scrutiny in any way, shape or form. Let's look at some of the healthiest countries in the world. Again, these will be, your Asian and African populations generally, who traditionally had no diabetes, no heart disease, none of these chronic illnesses. They ate, predominantly, rice or corn, carbohydrates. 80% minimum of their calories would come from carbohydrates, up to 90% in some cases, and they'd have anywhere from say 5 to 10% of the calories from protein, quite small amounts, because that's all they need. You don't need a lot of fat or protein in your diet. And these people, they have the lowest rates of chronic disease in the world. If you look at Africa, for example, back in the 70s, some US researchers went out to Uganda, and they tried to find people with heart disease, and they, out of about, let's see, about 632 people let's say in the US that would die, roughly about 136 of them, would have died from heart disease or a heart attack. So they went over to Africa, and they could only find one case of someone dying from heart disease or a heart attack out of 1,000. It's insane. That's how healthy people are on a plant-based diet. You hardly see any of these chronic illnesses. And if we bring it back to diabetes, so like I said, all these traditional populations around the world who eat high carb, low fat, low protein, predominantly plant-based because they're too poor to afford meat, they only eat meat on special occasions throughout the year. So it could be a religious festival of some kind, perhaps some kind of holiday, and they might only have meat literally once or twice or just a few times a year. They're not eating it every day like people in America or where I'm from. They're completely different to us. So straight away there you can begin to see the comparison. We in the West collectively eat these high fat, high protein, animal based diets. We have the highest rates of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, you name it. And in these other countries, these poorer third world countries who eat high carb, low fat, low protein, high fiber, whole food, plant-based, hardly any animal products, they have the lowest rates of cancer, the lowest rates of heart disease, the lowest rates of diabetes, the lowest rates of osteoporosis, the lowest rates of Alzheimer's, the lowest rates of atherosclerosis, the lowest rates of irritable bowel syndrome, the lowest rates of gout, you name it. They're so much healthier than we are when it comes to these chronic diseases, which they hardly have. And then the next thing to look at is what actually happens in these different countries when they start to consume animal products. What happens? What happens is they start to get sicker. Their disease rates start to go up. So you can look at all these populations who were once super healthy, and they're still relatively healthy compared to us. But if you look at them as they consume meat, their disease rates start to climb. So let's take Japan, for example. So Japan, back in the 50s, their colon cancer rate was something like a fifth of what it was in the US. And then what happened is, as they started to consume more meat, their colon cancer rate started to increase. And so if you couple, so we've got these three things here then, guys. So the first one is the countries with the highest fat, highest protein, animal-based diets have the highest rates of disease. Number two, the countries with the highest carb, lowest fat, lowest protein, relatively plant-based diets have the lowest rates of disease. Number three, as we see these different populations that were healthy or still are healthy begin to increase their amount of animal products, we can actually see a rise in their disease. Disease is starting to go up. In some cases they're not as high as us, but you can see it begin to gradually creep up. And then here's the next one, migration studies. So a lot of people will try and blame disease, their diabetes, their heart disease, their cancer, whatever, on their DNA, and they try and blame all of their problems and be a victim and blame DNA. And to be fair, there are some people out there with genuine genetic conditions, but the fact is the overwhelming vast majority of chronic disease in the West isn't caused by DNA, it's not caused by genetics, it's caused by food. So let's look at Japanese women, for example. If you were to look at, say, Japanese women back in the 1950s, they had hardly any breast cancer whatsoever. And even today, Japanese women have, relatively low rates of breast cancer compared to us here in the West. But what researchers found is that when you follow Japanese women, who, let's say, go to the US or the West, what happens is as they adopt the diet of the host country, the country they've gone to, what happens is their meat consumption starts to rise, their fish, chicken, eggs, milk, dairy all starts to increase, and as they increase, so does the disease, such that you actually see them adopt the disease rates of the country they've gone to. And this is across all diseases, whether it's cancer, diabetes, heart disease, etc. We're not just talking about just a little 20% difference. We're talking hundreds of percent. We're talking 500%, 1,000% increase in these diseases climbing. And why is that? It's food. So that's the fourth one, guys, and let's take the fifth one. So we've looked at different populations. We've looked at the West on the animal products. We've looked at Eastern countries and African countries and the plant-based diets. We've looked at the plant-based countries, or the poorer countries who eat plant-based. What happens to them as their meat goes up? We've looked at migration studies. What happens to them? The evidence is quite clear. People who come to our countries, they end up fat, sick and dying like us, with all the chronic diseases we have because of the way we eat. And the next one, guys, is the individual. So if you look at put these clinical studies to one side for a moment, because sometimes it's hard to see the people behind them. Let's look at real individual people. And if you look at, let's take Dr. Neil Barnard. He's a doctor in the US, and he is clinically shown that you can reverse type 2 diabetes in the vast majority of patients. How does he do it? High carb, low fat, low protein, high fiber, whole food, plant-based diets. Nearly all of his patients reverse their diabetes, and in addition to that, they also improve all of their other factors. So they lower their risk of heart disease. Some of them already have it, to be honest, but they can reverse it. And what we can see is in these patients, and if you look online, if you look on YouTube, these patients, they're not just numbers in a study. You can see the interviews with them. You can see documentaries with them featured, and you can see these real people, these real lives, people in the West who were, ill. Some of them were dying, and what happened? They reversed their diabetes, and it's proven. Please, hi guys, I just don't know what happened with my video. Then I just looked at my camera and it said it just stopped recording. So, right, where was I? So I just was talking there about. You go on YouTube, look at all these different people I'm talking about. You can actually see the real people behind a lot of these studies. Real people like you and me. That reverse these conditions. So I was just talking about Dr. Neil Barnard. Go check him out. You can see interviews with a lot of his patients online. Next one, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. He has shown how you can reverse heart disease by putting people on high carb, low fat, low protein, plant-based diets. He actually featured in a really good documentary called Forks Over Knives, which is where really my vegan journey began, and I first learned that protein and high fat was what was killing us. And Forks Over Knives basically follows him, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, as well as Dr. T. Colin Campbell, who did the China study, or better called the China Project. And in it you can actually see various people, many of them are Dr. Esselstyn's patients, who've basically been written off. They were the people who they were going to die soon, and what happened is he took them under his wing, got them to follow his diet to the letter. What happened? All of them ended up living pretty much. The only ones who did die in the end, when they died in about their mid-80s, from what I remember. It's not like he failed. And next one, Dr. Dean Ornish. So Dr. Dean Ornish has done the same as Dr. Esselstyn. He's clinically shown as well that heart disease is caused by animal products, high fat. If you actually go to his website, I'll post a link in the description. He's actually published many different bits of research, which you can go and then you can read for yourself. So just to bring it back, guys, so like I said, basically nearly all of our problems in society today when it comes to chronic health, disease, is caused by high fat diets. High fat diets based on animal products, they cause type 2 diabetes, they cause the insulin resistance in type 1 diabetics. How do we know this? Well, the type 1 diabetics, they have very low insulin to carb ratios. They have ratios of like 1 to 10, 1 unit to say 10 grams of carbs or less. That's not good. We know that it's high fat animal product diets, they cause heart disease. It's been shown that they can cause cancer, obesity, all the Alzheimer's, atherosclerosis, and all these different conditions. So don't think that it's carbs that are the problem. It's fat. You only need a small amount of fat in your diet, and you get the amount of fat you need in healthy, low, small amounts from plants. You only need a small amount. If you go eating animal products, to get fat, what will happen is you'll get fat long term. The fat you eat is the fat you wear, and what will happen is you'll see your health decline. So I'll give you a number of different doctors if you want to go check out. Don't trust me, go look these men up. All of these doctors together cover various different fields. Some of them overlap in a number of ways, but the common thing between all of them is this: they can reverse various chronic diseases and illnesses in their patients with high carb, low fat, low protein, high fiber, whole food, plant-based diets which have no meat, fish, chicken, eggs, milk or dairy. They can do it. They've shown it clinically, they've shown it scientifically. It is undeniable. It's so well documented, and you can go and see the people, the patients for yourselves. So the doctors that I'll recommend you all go look up are Dr. Neil Bernard, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, Dr. Dean Ornish, Professor T. Colin Campbell, Dr. Michael Greger, who runs nutritionfacts.org, which is probably one of the most amazing websites you'll ever find. Dr. John McDougall, he's got some really good videos here on YouTube. I recommend you check them out. Dr. Garth Davis, he's just recently published a great book I recommend you read called Proteinaholic. He's a bariatric surgeon down in Texas. Dr. Joel Kahn, Dr. Joel Furman. Have I missed anyone out? Yeah, so I think, that's a good enough list for you to start off with, guys. So I hope that's made sense. Sorry if that was a bit of a rant, bit of a ramble. Sorry about the video cutting out. I don't want it to be a bit disjointed. So I hope that makes sense. Remember, you want to eat high carb. Carbs are never your enemy. Animal products are. You want to eat high carb, low fat, low protein, plant-based. Reverse your diabetes if you're type 2. Improve your insulin sensitivity if you're type 1. And for anyone else in there who has any other kind of medical conditions, it will have a positive effect on your health. There will be no downsides to it. I hope that was useful, guys. Please comment below. Do you have any questions? Is there anything that you didn't understand? Is there anything that wasn't clear? Is there anything that you want me to clear up or try and explain better to you? Is there any links in particular you would like to see from me? What future videos do you want to see from me? Please put your comments, questions below, and I promise I will respond. And I'll hopefully be back with a video tomorrow. All the best, guys. Bye bye now. 10% of their calories come from fat, but in the West, or the standard American diet, people are consuming up to 40% of calories from fat, and then they're wondering why they get type 2. So let's take it a step back here then. So why is it that fat could cause type 2 in the first place? And it's quite simply this: when you take fat into your body, what happens is it makes its way into the bloodstream. Fat is the leading cause of diabetes, type 2 diabetes that is, and the reason why, quite simply, is that fat is what causes blood sugars to rise. Now, you probably didn't expect me to say that, but it's true. Fat is what causes blood sugars to rise, because in a normal person, and by normal I mean someone who's healthy and on a plant-based diet, which is what we were designed to eat, Hi guys, I just thought I'd make a quick video. So just been getting into some discussions with people online, and I thought I'd just come online and just have a bit of a rant. So basically today's video I'm going to talk about fat and why fat is probably the reason why, one, you've got type 2 diabetes in the first place, and two, if you're type 1 diabetic, why you're getting bad blood sugars. So not a lot of people realise this, but if you look at people in, say, traditional Africa or Asia who are eating, largely plant-based diets, they don't have type 2 diabetes. They just don't. They're healthy. Why is that? It's because they eat predominantly plant-based diet because they're too poor to afford meat, and about 80 to 90% of their calories come from carbohydrates. Only about 5 to no more than 10. And what happens is, imagine this hand here. Imagine this hand is the cell, and this hand here is the sugar. And in a normal person who is insulin sensitive, someone who's on a in a traditional African Asian country where they eat their traditional African Asian diet, you don't see type 2, because the reason why is those people are healthy. And what happens is, as the sugar comes in, the cell opens up, takes the carbs,